Welcome everybody, Brother Dan Goodwin here, your host on the God's Final Jubilee program on YouTube. If you look down there in the right corner, you'll see a subscribe button. If you have not subscribed and you like what you see here, I would encourage you to click the button there, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll get an alert every time we come on. We try to do at least one program every week, and eventually we'll be doing even more than that. And all right, on the program today, we're going to jump right into it. God'sFinalJubilee.com, by the way, is the website, and you can see my DVDs and books. What I'm going to do in this session is actually what I'm going to do on my Volume 3 of my Prophecy Unsealed DVD set. As you can see here, I have Volume 1 and Volume 2 of a 4-volume set. So far we've got 2 volumes done. Volume 2 just came out a few months ago. You can see these and read about them on the website. And there's 4 sessions, 4 PowerPoint sessions on each one, just like you see here. And what we're going to share with you in this video is actually going to be one of the sessions on my next DVD series. And it's going to be called, let me just give you the slide here. Here is what we're going to discuss today, and this is going to be one of the sessions on the next DVD set that I do that's coming out in the next month or two, as well as another book that's coming real soon, a very exciting book, and I'll tell you more about that in the next week or two. We're going to talk about in the midst of the week. By the way, what I'm going to share with you is going to be kind of condensed. It'll be twice as long in the video, but we don't have that much time on a YouTube video to do that. So I'm going to give you just a condensed version of this lesson in the midst of the week. What do I mean in the midst of the week? I'm talking about the middle of the tribulation period. I'm going to give you 10 things. I think that's what I've got written down so far, and that's not all of them, but I'm going to give you 10 things that happen in the middle of the tribulation period. The middle of the tribulation period. By the way, we've got folks watching live. You on YouTube, you're watching recorded. We're doing a live Facebook at the same time. We got folks, here's some folks from Troy, Missouri. I'll be in Missouri this week, Miss Gina. And we got several folks that are watching live, and so if, go to the website God'sFinalJubilee.com, and you can sign up. Just go to the Facebook page and click like, and you can follow us on Facebook. So I'd encourage you to do that. I post on Facebook many times a day. I post a lot of prophetic things and news items and whatnot. All right, are you ready to dig in? Get your Bible if you got a Bible handy. If not, you can always rewind this and watch it later and look the verses up for yourself. But we're going to look at the many end-time events that take place at the middle of the 70th week that we call the tribulation period. That's what we're going to do tonight in this video. We're going to look at some things, and I've got 10 of them. And we're going to look at some things that, and I think you're going to be shocked, some of you. I think you're going to be shocked that some things that you didn't realize were in the middle of the tribulation. You know, for instance, the mark of the beast. I hear people saying all the time, as soon as the rapture happens, the mark of the beast begins. That's not so. That's not true at all. And the mark of the beast, we'll get to that later. That's one of the 10 things that happens at the middle of the tribulation. So, listen, these are my opinions. You do not, nor should you take my word on things. You should study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed. You should study for yourself. Find out if Dan Goodwin's right. Okay, so let's jump into this. I'm going to start with Daniel chapter 9. And our text verse is verse 27. But let me read a few other verses here in Daniel chapter 9. Verse 26, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. By the way, that's actually 69 weeks, because there's 7 weeks he just talked about. Then there's 62 weeks, so 69 weeks in all, which is 483 years. Messiah is cut off, and you'll actually find a reference to that also in Isaiah. I think I got it marked back here. Well, I thought I did. I think it's Isaiah 53. Let me turn there real quick. Just look. Here we go. Isaiah 53 verse 8. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who shall declare his generation? For he was cut off out of the land of the living for the transgression of my people was he stricken. So Isaiah 53, that beautiful chapter about the sufferings of Christ, the Messiah, and it actually uses the same words. He's cut off. Now you see that in Daniel chapter 9, verse 26. Messiah is going to be cut off at the end of the 69th week. There's 70 weeks determined upon Israel. That's proof enough right there, without even looking at anything else in the Bible, that the church age is over when the 70th week begins, because this is Israel. 70 weeks are determined upon Israel, upon the holy city. All right, and then he gives a list of about 6 things, the purpose of these 70 weeks, and that includes the 70th week that is still hanging out there because it hasn't happened yet. And Messiah is cut off. It's Calvary, Palm Sunday, Calvary. And the church age is grafted in. The church age is a parenthesis stuck in between the 69th and 70th week. And pretty soon, we're going to be taken out of here. And that 70th week will begin. I believe it's all the same day, the same moment. I believe the moment we're taken out of here. I know there's others that believe there's a months, or even some people believe there's years between the rapture and the beginning of the tribulation. I do not believe that. And you'll see that in my session called When Time Shall Be No More. I think that's on volume 2 here. When Time Shall Be No More. I think it's on that one. No, it's on volume 1 here. Volume 1. Anyway, When Time Shall Be No More. And I believe I proved that when we're taken out of here, the church age, the 70th week, that 2,520 day period begins immediately. Okay, so let's keep moving here. So Daniel chapter 9, verse 26, I just read for you. Messiah the Lord shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come, now that's not Jesus, that's the Antichrist, the people of the prince that shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That he is the same he. It's not Jesus, it's not the Messiah. That's the Antichrist. The he, in verse 26 and 27, is the Antichrist. There are a lot of you out there got that wrong, and I've seen prophecy people get on YouTube and on TV and say that he there is actually Christ. No, it's not. That is the Antichrist, the false Christ. That's the guy in Revelation chapter 6 who comes on the white horse, the counterfeit Jesus, the counterfeit Messiah, who we call, and the Bible calls, the Antichrist. Okay, still with me? So the prince that shall come is not Messiah. Yes, our Messiah is coming the second time. I understand that. Revelation 19:11 comes on a white horse. But that's not who this prince here is. And the end thereof shall be with a flood. Now verse 27, he, this Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant. It doesn't say he makes the treaty. It doesn't say he makes the covenant. It says he confirms the covenant. Whatever that means. We talked about that, I think, in the last video. So in the midst of the week, he'll confirm this covenant with many for 1 week. How long's a week? It's 7 years, right? The 70 weeks, a week in the Bible is a 7-year period. Remember, Jacob worked for his wife for 7 years, and remember, he fulfilled her week. And then remember, his uncle Laban gave him the different girl, gave him Leah instead of Rachel. And Jacob was very upset, as you would be, right? He wakes up the next morning, wait a minute, that's the wrong girl. And so he works another week for Rachel. Not 7 days, but 7 years. Okay, a week. So there's proof about what a week is in the Bible. 7-year period. Remember them sevens and the sabbatical cycles. When you understand the sabbatical cycles, the 7th day, the 7th year, the 49th year, sabbatical cycles. This is one great giant 7,000-year cycle, sabbatical cycle, that our universe that God created inside of time and space. All right, so the Antichrist will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week, there's my my title there. In the midst of the week, that's Daniel 9:27. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate. I think I've got that up here. Let me bring that up. There we go. There's the verse, so you can see it on your screen there, hopefully. even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. I've also got Daniel 8:11 written there. I don't know what that is offhand, but I wrote it there. Daniel 8:11. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. There you go, Daniel 8:11. The daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. That's a reference, either directly or indirectly, to Matthew 24, the abomination of desolation. And we'll get to that in just a second. So, there are several things in the Word of God, several things in the end times that are going to take place during this midst of the week. Well, what does he mean by midst of the week? He's talking about the middle of the week. Remember, there are two halves to the tribulation period. There's the first half and the second half. The first half is exactly 1,260 days, or 3.5 months, right? 3.5 years, we would call it. But God is more specific in the Bible. He's got it right down to months and days. It's 42 months, which is 1,260 days. And I have a chapter in my book, God's Final Jubilee, as well as the Mystery of the Jubilee, where I discuss those timelines, the 1,260 days, the 42 months, 3.5 years. And the tribulation period is 2,520 days. I have a chapter called 2520 in the Jubilee book. Very important you understand that you cannot figure this stuff out with the Gregorian calendar that you and I are using. You'll never figure this out. And if you don't understand Abib and the way Passover was determined every year by the barley harvest, the resetting of the Hebrew calendar every 2 or 3 years with the harvest of the barley, you'll never understand. You'll never be able to figure out timelines until you understand how it worked in the Bible and in Bible days, because there's only 354 days on the Jewish calendar, so it's not going to come out right. It's not going to be an annual thing that you can figure out without understanding the barley harvest and how Abib worked and how they reset their calendar and how they counted days and months and the lunar cycles and all that. So anyway, there's a lot to grasp there, understand. But so let's jump right into this. I'm going to give you 10 things real quickly here that I think will help you. What it means, what happens in the midst of the week. What happens in the midst of the week? I'm going to try to help you with this. Number one, the abomination of desolation takes place. Well, we just read that in Daniel chapter 9 in verse 27 and Daniel 8. And I'm going to write that down on my notes here because I want to add that to the slides because I don't have that. Daniel 8:11 is worth putting in there. And so we're adding as we go here. I didn't see my reference in my Bible here, and I'm sure there's others as well, but Daniel 8:11 talks about the daily sacrifice taken away. You'll see that right there in Matthew 24. The abomination of desolation, it's called, right? And he says, as the prophet Daniel said. So Daniel 8:11 and Daniel 9:27. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. So that's the same as Daniel 8:11. I got Matthew opened in the Bible over here, Matthew 24, beginning in verse 15. When you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation. There, you've heard that 100 times, right? That phrase, the abomination of desolation. It's when the temple is defiled by Antichrist. And he throws over the altar, gets rid of the sacrifices, because he's going to be the sacrifice. He's going to become God. By the way, he has a wound, remember he has a wound. A lot of people believe he dies, and he's brought back to life. You'll see that in Revelation 13. Listen, isn't he the counterfeiter? Isn't he the lamb? Doesn't he have to be slain? Doesn't he have to fulfill the 7 feasts? Yeah. Now I don't believe he really dies because I believe he's a real man that's going to be indwelt by Satan here in the middle of the tribulation. And I'm going to write that down because I don't think I have that. Indwelt by Satan, and I believe that happens at the middle. But I didn't. That's not one of my 10. But that's something I'll add to this later. So hey, we're getting a few more as we go here. So Matthew 24, that abomination of desolation. I believe right there possibly that the Antichrist somehow gets a wound and dies and is brought back to life, or at least it's a deception. I believe he deceives people into this. All right. So let's read this passage. When therefore you see the abomination of desolation, this is a warning, by the way, that Jesus is giving to the disciples and the people of Israel. This Matthew 24 is to the Jews. Now it's for us, but it's not to us, right? So many people misunderstand. You will not see the church here. This is Israel after we're gone. This is during the tribulation period. And they didn't even understand the rapture at this point in time, because the rapture was a mystery revealed to Paul in the book of Acts. So Jesus is talking about what it's going to be like during the 70th week when the Antichrist takes over. And he says, when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, which you can read in Daniel 9:27, Daniel 8:11, stand in the holy place. Where's that? That's the temple. The temple that don't exist yet, but is just about ready to exist, right? It does have to exist by the time the middle of the tribulation is there. This temple has got to be standing and in use. Okay? Whoso readeth, let him understand. In other words, if you understand the Old Testament, if you understand, you'll understand this, that the Lord's saying. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. He's given a warning here. In other words, if you're alive and you're in Israel and you see this happen, the abomination, the Antichrist entering the Holy of Holies, the holy place in the temple, that's your cue to get out of Dodge. Get out of there. Why? Because all hell is getting ready to break loose. Remember, Israel's been at peace for 3.5 years. The whole world's been at war. In fact, Revelation 6, the first 4 horsemen alone, a fourth of the world will die during the first few months of the tribulation period. I believe the first 4 or 5 months in Revelation 6. But Israel's at peace because that covenant is confirmed by the Antichrist, and it's believed that he's going to protect Israel, but the whole world's at war. So they're at perfect peace for this first half. But then at the middle, when the Antichrist enters the holy place, the abomination of desolation, Daniel 8:11, Daniel 9:27, Matthew 24:15, 16 here, understand, he says, that to run for your life, because what's getting ready to happen is going to be bad. Okay? Let's see. Yeah, here we go. So we got a couple of verses there for you. I also got Daniel 11, verse 31, which I didn't read to you. That's on the screen there. Daniel 11:31, and I'll come back to Matthew. Just hang on. Daniel 11:31. And arms shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. So there's 3 places in Daniel. There's probably more, but there's 3 right there that talk about the abomination of desolation that we're reading right here in Matthew 24, which is Jesus talking to when he says, look what he says here. Let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. He didn't say those which be in Chicago, or those which be in Persia, or those in Babylon. He specifically said those in Judea. And by the way, Jerusalem is in the state of Judea. Judea is the state, Jerusalem's the city. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. In other words, you ain't got time. Don't even go get anything. Run for your life. You've got minutes to survive. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them who are with child, and that give suck in those days. Why? Because it's hard to run when you've got a child or a little baby, or if you're pregnant. How do you run for your life? So he's painting a pretty vivid picture of danger and seriousness here. You still with me? But pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. This is the beginning of the worst time in the history of the world. worse than Hitler's extermination of millions of Jews, worse than any plague, worse than any war. The Great Tribulation, which leads us to another one of our topics here, our 10. The next one here, let me bring it up for you. The abomination of desolation is number 1. Gave you some scriptures there for that. Secondly, the tribulation, the Great Tribulation, the time of Jacob's trouble. A lot of you get this wrong. A lot of people talk about the 70th week, the 7-year tribulation, as being the Great Tribulation. That's not exactly true. The Great Tribulation, according to Matthew 24 and verse 21, for then shall be great tribulation, for such as was not since the beginning of the world. The Great Tribulation is mainly for the Jews, and it begins at the middle of the tribulation, in the midst of the week. You still with me? So that's number 2. The abomination begins at the middle of the tribulation, when Antichrist enters the temple. I believe possibly he'll have a wound and be resurrected to some, at least in a deceiving way, make it look like he died and came back to life to fulfill what Jesus did, rising from the dead. The Great Tribulation begins right there when he breaks the covenant with Israel. And number 3, there's another one. Let me quickly give you another one. Number 3, Satan. Number 3 here, Satan. Where's number 3? The numbers are cut off, and I apologize for that. This was all kind of done quickly tonight, and I've cut the numbers off a little bit. But number 3, right here, Satan, right at the middle of the tribulation, is cast down to the earth. Cast down. Satan is cast to the earth. He opens a bottomless pit, releasing devils upon the earth. Let me read a couple places for you. Revelation chapter 9. If I can get there. Let me put a bookmarker in here. Revelation 9. By the way, Revelation 9, if you have my Revelation study guide, you know my theme for Revelation 9 is called Hell on Earth. And here's why. By the way, Revelation 8, the last verse of Revelation 8, verse 13, behold, and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, 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 3 woes, to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. That's trumpet. Remember the 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 vials. The 7 trumpets, the last 3 trumpets, 5, 6, and 7, of the last 3 trumpets are also called the 3 woes. You'll see that in Revelation 8, verse 13. Then you go to Revelation 9, the very next verse, verse 1, and the 5th angel, that's the 5th angel with the 5th trumpet. Remember, 7 seals, the 7th seal is the 7 trumpets, the 7th trumpet is the 7 vials of the wrath of God. And so trumpet 5, 6, and 7 are called the 3 woes, and they're pretty bad. And here it is, Revelation 9, verse 1, and the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. Now this isn't a literal star. How do we know that? Keep reading. And to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. Do you think a literal star would be given a key to open something? No, of course not. This star is Satan falling from heaven. A star falling is always a type of a demonic being falling. And this is none other than Satan himself. And he opened the bottomless pit in verse 2, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air was darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have powers, commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And the tormentor as a scorpion when he striketh. And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it. Right at the middle of the tribulation, Satan loses his access to the throne of God, loses access to God, and can no longer. He's cast out of heaven, so to speak, and now he is confined to the earth like we are. And he's given the keys. He opens the bottomless pit. He lets these devils out for 5 months. Men will be stung. Men will be tormented, but nobody dies. Now that's pretty shocking. Now these are lost people now, not anybody who is sealed, or not anybody who's a saint. These are lost people. No lost people will die. And that doesn't mean saints who get saved, and it don't mean they can't be martyred, because they're not part of this. Okay, and let me take you to Revelation chapter 9 or chapter 12. Remember last year all the controversy over Revelation 12. Let me real quickly. Verse 7, there was war in heaven. Now, verse 7, Revelation 12, verse 7 is talking about the middle of the tribulation period. I don't have time to go through the whole passage, starting in verse 1. I've got that in other videos. Go back and look through my other videos months ago. In fact, 2017, go back and you'll see some videos I did about the Revelation 12 sign. Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 is the middle of the tribulation. It's the midst of the week. All right, you with me? And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought, and his angels prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He wasn't deceiving the whole world when he was cast out the first time, when he rebelled against God and showed up in the Garden of Eden. Isn't that plain in the text in verse 9? He's talking about future from there. Now, there is no past, present, or future in heaven. That's where some of you are so confused. There's only real time in heaven, and you're not going to grasp that sitting on your sofa. You're going to have to really think. My chapter, The Mystery of Time, I deal with that in the book. And his angels were cast out with him. I heard a voice saying, the accuser of the brethren is cast down, which accused them before God day and night. That's proof in verse 10. That is absolute proof that this passage, and from verse 7 on, is talking about during the tribulation, not back when Satan was cast out of heaven or when he rebelled against God. Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 and all that. All right, and Satan in the garden in Genesis 3. That's not what this is talking. This is talking about a future event that has not happened yet. Okay? All right, quickly here. We're already over time here. And the dragon, verse 13, saw that he was cast unto the earth. He persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. There begins the second half of the tribulation. That's Satan going into the temple, or indwelling the Antichrist. The Antichrist breaks the treaty and begins to declare war on the nation of Israel to try to kill every single Jew that he can. Okay, so that all happens. Now, that's number 3. And number 4, the Antichrist kills the 2 witnesses on Passover. And I don't have time to read these verses for you because I've gone too long already. Number 4, the Antichrist kills the 2 witnesses on Passover. That's Moses and Elijah. I give indisputable proof of that in my book. Matthew 17 is very clear at the Transfiguration. It's not Enoch, it's Moses and Elijah. They are the 2 witnesses. I explain all that in the book. The Antichrist is going to kill them on Passover right in the midst of the week. He goes into the temple. The abomination happens. 3.5 days later, after they're left dead in the streets, they're resurrected in the sight of the 144,000 Jewish men, from 12,000 from each tribe. And they're going to get saved right there. Number 5, the covenant is broken. Daniel 9:27, right in the midst of the week, the covenant is broken. Matthew 24:15-22, we read that already. Number 6, the entire world rejoices at the death of the 2 witnesses. This is Revelation 11 and verse 10. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these 2 prophets, Moses and Elijah, tormented them that dwelt on the earth. Tormented them with their preaching about Jesus, the Messiah. Notice the wording there. They that dwell on the earth shall rejoice over them. The whole world rejoices when these 2 men are dead in Israel. Number 7, the 2 witnesses ascend bodily to heaven in the sight of the 144 Jewish men. By the way, if they die on Passover, if they ascend back to heaven 3.5 days later, what day is that? Feast of First Fruits, the same day Jesus rose from the grave. That's right. These guys ascend back to heaven, and I can show you in the Bible without any doubt. Verse 13, the same hour was there a great earthquake. The 10th part of the city fell. This is Matthew 24. This is Run for Your Lifetime. Here it is, Revelation 12:13. The same hour, a great earthquake. A tenth part of the city, Jerusalem, fell. And in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. And the remnant were affrighted. Who's the remnant? The 144,000. And what did they do? They gave glory to the God of heaven. By the way, why are they there? Why are the 144,000 Jewish men hanging around Jerusalem? Because Passover evening, the beginning of Feast of Unleavened Bread, all your Jewish men are commanded to be in Jerusalem. During the tribulation, they're back under the temple worship, they're back under these Old Testament laws, and they have to be in Jerusalem. That's why they're there. They've been there at least since Passover, or at least since Unleavened Bread. They watched the two witnesses die. They're there when they ascend back to heaven. That's when the light bulb comes on, and these 144,000 suddenly say, Jesus was or is the Messiah. We get it now. Ain't that something? By the way, Revelation 14:1-4 calls them the first fruits unto God. They are the first people saved during the tribulation period, right at the middle. That's shocking. That's shocking. I discuss that in my books. Antichrist possibly dies, number 9, and is brought back to life, though only as a deception. It's faked. That's Revelation 13:11-14. That's another, right at the middle of the tribulation. And number 10, the mark of the beast begins. The mark of the beast begins. That's Revelation 13, verse 16. And you know that verse, I'm sure. He causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in his right hand or in his forehead. This is during the second half of the tribulation period. It does not happen right at the rapture. It happens 3.5 years later. Okay, so what happens in the midst of the week? These 10 things, and there are more than 10, all happen within hours of each other. By the way, these 10 things I gave you are not necessarily given in exact order. In fact, they are not in exact order. When I do the DVD, I may try to put them in order, but it doesn't matter. They're all within a few hours of each other. And lastly, everything changes. Everything changes in the midst of the week for Israel and for the world. Not that things weren't bad in the first half, but everything changes during the second half. Well, I hope this has been a blessing to you. I know this is kind of fast forwarded, and I know I went a little fast on these last ones, didn't read some of the scriptures, but you can go look them up for yourself, and I hope that this will be an enlightening to you, help you understand the chronology of your Bible a little better. All right, God'sFinalJubilee.com. We'll see you next time.